Good morning. Yeah. Oh, man, y'all the best service so far. That's great. Hey, like Michael said, my name's Jeremy. I'm one of the pastors here. And we get to kick off today a new series. I have the privilege of doing that called The Crossroad. And we're going to be taking a look at some significant events that happened leading up to Easter where we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. And so as I was preparing for today and thinking through, like, how do we talk about some of this? How do I get people on the same page? I started to think, like, how everything in life can really be categorized or summed up with some if-then statements. You know, if this happens, then this happens. If I do this, here's the thing that happens after that. And we really begin to learn that at an early age. When I was a kid, one of the things, probably all of you have heard this at some point, but my parents said, you can't eat your dessert until you clean your plate. So if you clean your plate, then you get to have dessert, or you get to go play or do whatever it is that you want to do. And I just want you to know, I'm very thankful that I'm not a kid anymore and I don't have to abide by those rules. This past week on Monday, we had a lunch together. And one of the things that we had at that lunch was banana pudding. And banana pudding is my favorite. And so I had banana pudding first. Yep, because I can. And here's what I think. That if the best part of the meal is available, why would I not eat that first, right? And if something was going to interrupt our meal, if Jesus decided he was going to come back before I ate the main course, I would rather eat banana pudding first anyways. And I don't have a problem eating all of my meal after that. In fact, I did that, and then I ate banana pudding afterwards too, because I can. Now that's funny, but we do learn a bunch of if-then stuff. You learn it a little bit later than that if you don't obey your parents, then there might be some consequences to that. If you eat pizza right out of the oven, it will burn your mouth, and it might take 100 times to actually learn that lesson, because I still do it, right? And then you get older and you learn, like, if I don't show up to work, then I don't get paid, or I might lose my job. If I eat too much dairy, my stomach does not like me very much. And it goes into our hopes and our dreams. If I can get that house or that job, or if I can get that car or that boat, or if I can just land that deal or meet the right person, then I will have arrived, and then I will be happy. And somewhere along the line in there, we begin to leverage those things to our advantage. As a kid, it might be, hey, if I do these things that my parents have been pestering me to do, then maybe they'll let me go do what I want to do this weekend. Or as a spouse, if I can do the things that are on my honey-do list, then when I want to go fishing, nobody's going to complain about it. That would be a good thing. Then it moves even into our faith. And unfortunately, how we carry out our faith, maybe you do this, but it's not the way that we should operate. Maybe you were brought up being taught these things, that if I go to church enough, if I do enough of the right things, then I will be and stay in right standing with God. But that's not what he called us to do. If I mess up again, if I do the wrong thing again, if I continue to go down this destructive path, then God's going to punish me. But that's not how it works either. Yes, there are consequences for our actions, but we engage God many times in a manner that he never intended for us to do. If I can get the pastor to pray, or the right people to pray, or enough people to pray, then what I'm asking for, maybe God will grant that thing, and we try to manipulate the outcome. The problem is it never really works out the way that we want or expect. And God is the one that is responsible for the outcome, and it doesn't always make sense to us. He even mentioned something about that in Isaiah. He said, my thoughts are not your thoughts. That's probably good. My ways are not your ways. Another version, he says, my ways are way beyond what you could ever even imagine. And so he's qualified, absolutely, to be the person, to be who is over the outcome. My responsibility, your responsibility, is the process. To take each step along with him, trusting in him. But it's not that easy because I'm a control freak. Any other control freaks in here? If I had the opportunity to control all of the things around me and all of the things that happen in my life and determine the outcome, I'd take that deal. I would love that. I try to control all the stuff all the time. God's like, no, see, that's not trusting in me. So I messed that up. Today we're going to look at a story in the book of John where it shows us once again the best option is to trust him with the outcome. But it's just not necessarily easy to do. So will you pray with me and ask God to speak to you and through me as I tell this story and what I think he wants us to hear today. God, thank you for today. Thank you that you've given me the opportunity to speak today, to kick off this series, that you've been speaking to me about this and working on me. And so today I just ask that you would speak through me. And as you do that, God, I ask that, I know that you're here, and I'm thankful for that, and I know that you're speaking, but you would help people to be receptive to what you want to say, and that you would speak into their lives and encourage them in their relationship with you, or if they don't have that they would choose that today. God, I love you. In your name I pray. Amen. So we're going to take, I said this a minute ago, we're going to take a look at the book of John, and John is a pretty unique book. It's one of the 4 Gospels. It's a story of Jesus' life. But what is unique about it is that John actually tells us exactly why he wrote the book of John. In John chapter 20, verse 31, he says this, like right towards the end of everything that he wrote. He said, "But these are recorded so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God." He's saying these are recorded. It's everything that he wrote before that, so that you would believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. But that's not enough, because even Satan believes. Satan, it's not even belief for him. He knows that Jesus is God's Son, but he doesn't follow him. So he goes on and he says, "And that by believing you may have life in his name." He wants us to believe and choose to follow. Jesus, when he told people, as he did his ministry on earth, he said, "Follow me. Follow me." That we find out that only through Jesus do we have relationship with God. And so Jesus said, "Follow me, follow me." That's what he kept telling people to do. It's not enough just to believe, but you got to put that belief into action. And the whole point of everything that John wrote was so that people would believe. And so we're going to look at John chapter 11. It's a story you may have read before, you may have heard before. It's a story of a guy named Lazarus. We start off in verse 1. It says this: "Now a certain man named Lazarus was sick, and he was from Bethany, the village where Mary and her sister Martha lived. Now it was Mary who anointed the Lord with perfumed oil and wiped his feet dry with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick." John is setting the stage. His audience that he initially wrote this to was a Jewish audience that were aware of Jesus. Some of them were followers of Jesus. Some of them were trying to figure out, is this guy really who he said he was? So they would be aware of Mary. They would be aware of Martha and Lazarus. They may have heard this before, but he's just trying to tell them, this is who I'm talking about. And he said this about Mary. He actually says this here before it's even happened. Chapter 12 is where that actually happens. But he tells us this so that we are all understanding of who he is talking about, because these were people that were friends of Jesus. These were people that Jesus went to their house, that he shared a meal with them, that he cared about, that when he was in that area, he would stay there, and he fostered over time a relationship with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. It wasn't just some random people that he would come in contact with as he did ministry. And that's important because as we look at verse 3, it says, "So the sisters sent a message to Jesus. 'Lord, look.'" They didn't say Lazarus. He said, the one you love is sick. Like, this is important. Hey, when you go tell him, say it's the one you love, not just Lazarus. He needs to know that this is important. And this little word "so" here, saying, because Lazarus is sick, he was sick, so they sent Jesus a message. When we have a problem, when there's something going on that's too big for us, their response was to look to Jesus. And when Jesus heard this, he said, this sickness will not lead to death, but to God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Okay. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he remained in place where he was for 2 more days. Let me just tell you, that right there messed me up. I looked at multiple different versions of Scripture, like, what is he really saying here? And every time I read it, it was easy to just kind of read through and keep going because I know the story. But I looked it up in the Greek, and that little word "so" is the same word that's used in verse 3. And the translation of it is "therefore." It's saying, this happened, therefore, this was the result afterwards. And so I read that, and I'm like, wait, so Jesus loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus, so because he loved them, when he heard, he stayed for 2 more days? What? I don't know what to do with that. That doesn't even make sense. That is not remotely close to my understanding of love. It doesn't register with me. A couple of years ago, I'm standing right here on this stage. We're wrapping up, putting together Thanksgiving meal bags. Some of you may have been here for that. And we're finishing that up, and we're talking about it. Take a picture. We're going to pray and all this. As we finish that, and my wife calls, and I'm standing, and I just ignore the call. My sister was sitting right down here, and she goes, hey, that's Whitney's calling you. You ought to answer that. I'm like, oh, okay. So I answer the phone really quick, and she says, hey, Harper, my daughter, is sick, and her fever is spiking to a dangerous degree, and we need to take her to the ER. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I told her, like, well, hey, I got to finish this, and so I'm going to hang out here and finish and get all this wrapped up and send everybody home, and then I'll call you and see how things are going, and then I'll meet you there. No, I didn't do that. Some of y'all believe that for a second. Absolutely not. I said, I'm coming right now. I was like, somebody else take over. None of that matters anymore. And I left, and I got home as fast as I could, and we got to the hospital as fast as we could, and she's fine now, but it was scary. But why did I do that? Because I love them. I responded to my wife that way because I love her. She called and said, I need you to come home. And I said, yeah, I'm there because I love her. I went and helped my daughter in her time of need because I love her, because love to me is responding to that, and it's proximity, right? Not, I love you, so I'm going to wait. It just doesn't make sense. Like, I read that, and I'm like, but why? I don't understand. And it's really easy to gloss over that and know what happens at the end of the story and read through and go, okay, this is what happened. But if you're in the story, oh, it's not easy. Spoiler alert, if you don't know the story of Lazarus, he dies. Jesus shows up late. He is late, but he's late on purpose. And he raises Lazarus from the dead. But he knows the outcome. He's responsible for the outcome. But Mary and Martha didn't know. They didn't understand. The disciples didn't know. The person that you love is sick and you're not going, and we don't understand why you're doing this. And if you're in it, if you're in the moment, you can't see the outcome. It's not your responsibility to take care of that. It's really hard to just, okay, whatever. We're just going to trust. No, it's like, I want to know. That's why I want to be in control. Maybe for you, you're in a season of I am in the middle of the unknown and I don't know what to do with it. And God, I'm asking for help and I feel like I'm just not getting an answer. Help. Maybe it's your job and you don't know what that's going to look like. And you're like, could you please give me a little bit of direction, God? Like I don't know what to do. Or maybe a relationship that is really valuable close to you, or your marriage, and it feels like it's falling apart and you're crying out to God And you're like, what do I do? And you just keep coming up going, oh, I don't know. Just like you, maybe, the people in this story had no idea what the outcome was. And they absolutely didn't understand. But we don't jump to the end. We have hindsight in our favor of stuff that's happened to us in the past. And when we read Scripture, all this happened in the past, so you can, okay, this is how it works out. But when we do that, we miss what happens in the process. And Jesus doesn't want us to miss what happens in the process. The problem is it's a whole lot easier said than done. Because when you're in it, that's all you can see. So let's take a look at the different characters here, the disciples, Mary and Martha, what happened with them as they interacted with Jesus with this. So 2 days passed, and it says, then after this, he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. And the disciples replied, Rabbi, the Jewish leaders were there, or the Jewish leaders were just now trying to stone you to death where they were wanting to go. Are you going there again? Like, we're going to point out, like, do you not realize what's going on? I'm going to tell you what's happening because what you're saying, no, that doesn't line up with what I think should happen. And then Jesus replied, are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks around in the daytime, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks around at night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. And I think that the disciples were like, did you not hear what I just asked you? What are you even talking about? Are we going to Judea or not? You ever ask somebody a question and their response and you're like, what? Like, what? What are you even saying? I think they were confused. Jesus realized that. I think that's why he goes on and says this. After he said this, he added, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to awaken him. Then the disciples replied, Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he will recover. Like, if he fell asleep, God, he's going to wake up. Like, it ain't no big deal. Like, why would we go to where people don't want us there? I would have responded the same way. Why? Because I'm very literal. If you say he's asleep, then I think that he's asleep. And I get that stuff wrong all the time. My wife, she's very witty. She can come up with a joke on boom, right off the bat. And most of the time I don't get it. And then she kind of has to roll her eyes and go, if I have to explain it to you, it's not that funny. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you did there. And she's like, yeah, you're slow. Because I'm literal. She's funnier than I am. Quick with that stuff. I would have been like the disciples. If he's sleeping, what's the point in going? But see, here's what happens. Jesus had been talking about his death, but they thought he'd been talking about real sleep. I'm in the same boat. Wow, just say what you mean, Jesus. So then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died. And I'm glad for your sake that I was not there. And they're like, what? So that you may believe. But let us go to him. Now, I just love this because if you put yourself in the situation of being the disciples, this is legitimate, a conversation that you could have and be like, what are you talking about? And how the reactions are. I would have been in the same boat as them. And then I already believe you, Jesus. Why do you, what do you mean I need to believe? And that he died? Your friend died and you're glad that we weren't? I don't understand. So then Thomas, this is my favorite part of the disciples' interaction, called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, let us go too, that we may die with him. Anybody an overreactor? Anybody? Jump to the worst possible conclusion? Oh my God. Well, if we're going to go there, they want to kill you. Lazarus is dead. We're just going to go there and they're going to kill us too. So we'll just join Lazarus in death. Come on, everybody. Let's go. Okay, dramatic much, Thomas? Chill out. It's funny. My daughter says that when we get loud and guys, relax. She thinks she is funny. But Thomas saying that stuff because that's what he was feeling, but he still went. He still went. He still followed Jesus, even though he didn't agree with what was going on, and he absolutely didn't understand. So then they arrive. It goes on. It says, when Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had been in the tomb 4 days already. That's important. John said that because the cultural belief was that the spirit could return to the body within 3 days. So anything past that, it's like Lazarus was dead. There is no question about it. Now, Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, so many of the Jewish people of the region had come to Martha and Mary to console them over the loss of their brother. So there was a lot of people there to grieve alongside with them and then to just try to help out in however they could. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, again, put yourself in the situation. She went out to meet him. She's like, I ain't waiting for you to get to my house. I'm going. And Mary stayed at the house. But I just picture Martha like she's not just walking like, okay, here comes Jesus. No, she's like stomping. She's got that look on her face like she's mad. I'm going to meet you out here. I'm going to tell you what I think. You know, the person when they're walking through, everybody's like, ooh, say they mad. Just get out the way. Step back. Let them go. I don't even want to say hi because I don't know what's going to come out of their mouth because, whoo, you can see it on their face. That's what I picture Martha stomping out to get to Jesus. And when she gets there, this is what she says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. You didn't show up. I asked you to be here and you didn't show up. She's mad. She's hurting. She's grieving. Oh, now you come, now that you're good and ready on your time? Maybe sarcastic. I don't know. But she was not happy, but she also had a relationship with Jesus that was very valuable, that had been developed over time. And even though she didn't understand, and even though she was frustrated, she's like, but I still value this, and I don't know what to do with it. She lets us know in what she says, but even now I know whatever you ask from God, God will grant you. Like, I still know who you are, but I just don't understand what's happening. I'm still mad, but I still love you and I still value this relationship. And Jesus replied to her, your brother will come back to life again. Martha said, I know that he will come back to life again in the resurrection at the last day. She's like, yeah, I get that. I understand he's going to come back whenever the resurrection happens at the last day. That's all, whatever. But that's not what I was asking for. That's not why I called you. I called you so you could do something before it happened. So I get that, but that's not what my expectation was for the outcome. And then Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even if he dies. I think she's going, okay, but like I don't understand. And the one who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And then she replied. She didn't just say yes. I like what she said because she's honest. Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who comes into the world. I don't know about all the other stuff because I don't understand it, but I believe in you, and I believe you, and I trust you, and that's as far as I can go right now. So she's like, yes, but I don't know what's going on. And Jesus, she doesn't get this, but he's like, oh, hold on. I am the living embodiment of God. I am Jesus. I am the Son of God. I am here right now. Life comes through me. Your understanding of the Messiah, you don't get it, but I am. This is why he waited. It's why John wrote this account, so that she would believe, so that the disciples would believe, so that when we read this, me and you would believe. And the disciples and Martha at this point are going, we believe you, God. We believe you, Jesus, but we just don't understand what that really means or how this is going to turn out. And I think that he's going, exactly, but just keep trusting in me, because what will come out will be beautiful. Trusting in him for the outcome instead of trying to manipulate it. And when she said this, Martha went back home. She called her sister Mary and said privately, "The teacher is here asking for you." And so Mary, when she heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still in the place where Martha had come out to meet him. She stopped him like, "You ain't come into my house yet." "No, I'm mad. You don't get to come in my house, eat my food, hang out like we always have, because I'm not ready for that. I'm going to keep you at arm's length. I'm trying to protect myself. I'm hurting, and I can't do this right now." And he's only going to come as far as we allow him. In situations where you're dealing with a lot, pain or grief or just the unknown, do you keep him at a distance? Do you be like, I don't know if I want to let you in here because of your pain or your grief or your pride? Like, I don't know. You know what? I got this one. I think we all do that. And he's only going to come as far as we allow him to come. So then the people who were with Mary in the house consoling her saw her get up quickly and go out, and they followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. They were trying to just be there and grieve along with her. And now when Mary came to the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and she said to him the same exact thing that her sister said. They'd probably been talking about it. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." I think she's going, why? Why didn't you come? Why didn't you come when I called? But her attitude is a little different. I identify with Martha. I'm going to tell you what I think about it. I'm going to stand my ground. I'm probably going to try to keep you at a distance because I'm mad and I'm trying to control the situation. But see, Mary comes at it from a different perspective. Mary responds like my daughter Harper does a lot of times. If she gets told no, or I hurt her feelings because I told her she can't do something, I'm in the right as her parent parenting her, but she doesn't understand and she gets upset. But she comes directly to me to hold her and to console her when she doesn't feel like everything's going the way that she wants to. And I think that's the attitude that Mary drops at Jesus' feet. Like, you didn't show up when I asked you to. And I don't know what to do with it, but I still need you and I love you. And why didn't you come? And Mary and Martha both come to Jesus with this heavy burden and this deep pain. But they still trusted him even when they didn't understand. Maybe you ask a lot of why questions. When we ask why questions, most of the time we don't get an answer, but they come up and they start just plaguing our mind and they pour out of us. And I think that internally, Mary and Martha are thinking like, why didn't you come when I called? Why didn't you answer when I needed you to? You could have done something about this before it led to this pain. That's why I cried out to you in the first place. I've seen you do miracles. I've seen you heal people that couldn't walk. I've seen you give people sight that couldn't see. I've seen you take care of people that don't know you, that don't follow you, that you've just extended this incredible miracle and grace to them. And we love you and you've eaten in our home and then I call you and you didn't show up. What am I supposed to do with that? Maybe you've said the same thing. God, why do I continue to cry out to you? Why? Why do I keep dealing with the same pain? Why am I still battling the same addiction? Why? Why does the prayer that I asked you for not work out? Why didn't I receive healing? Why didn't my loved one receive healing? Why are they still plagued with this ailment? Why won't you grant us with a child? Why does everybody else just have a baby whenever they want to and we can't? Why? Why did the person that I love have to die? And all the pain and the thoughts come bubbling up to the surface, and it's to the point of being completely overwhelmed. And maybe you're there right now. Maybe you've been there before, and we don't understand because our responsibility is not the outcome. And it's not easy to be there by any means. problem is that we confuse his love with conformity to our agenda. If you loved me, then this would happen. And he's like, it doesn't work that way because I'm the God of the outcome, and you don't know what that looks like. You need to trust me in the process. But that is so difficult sometimes. But if we pay really close attention to the disciples and Mary and Martha, we can see what they got right and begin to put some of that into practice in our own lives. Very first thing, they were honest. Some of you need to stop telling God lies and just be honest with where you're at because he's big enough to handle it. But you can't just tell him off and then go, maybe what you need to do is go, this is how I feel and I want to trust you and I don't know how. But be honest. And then place yourself in a position of going, I'm going to trust you. I don't know what to do with it. In spite of their circumstances, in spite of their doubts and their fears and their complete lack of control, they still put their trust in Jesus. And here's a beautiful, beautiful thing that he did as he talked with and dealt with Mary. This is when Jesus saw her weeping and the people who had come with her weeping. He was intensely moved in spirit and greatly distressed. And he asked, where have you laid him? And they replied, Lord, come and see. They invited him past the point of keeping him at arm's length and go, come see where my pain is. I'm letting you in. Come check out where the source of this is. Come on. And then it says Jesus wept. But he didn't weep over Lazarus because he knew he was going to raise him from the dead. And a lot of people just read past that like, his friend. And the people even said, who came to mourn, look how much he loved him, but that was not accurate. Yes, he loved him, but he wept because he was grieving alongside of people that he cared about. He was grieved because they were grieved. And in your pain, right alongside of you, he will grieve with you while at the same time being able to be your source of strength, your source of hope, your source of peace, your source of comfort, because his ways are not our ways, and I am not capable of doing that. But he can. And so intensely moved, hold on, I think I missed something. Yeah, sorry. Some of them said, this is the man who caused the blind man to see. They're talking about like, hey, like he could have done something about this. Couldn't he have done something to keep Lazarus from dying? And see, the people around you, they're going to validate your fears. They're going to validate how you feel. They're going to validate like your doubts. But if they don't point you then to Jesus, to trust him, then you need to get some new people around you. Because it's not about just my feelings, how I feel. This is my reality. This is my truth. And I'm going to put this out there, and that's what I'm going to stake everything on. Jesus is like, yeah, but in spite of that, choose to follow me because I got you. Trust me. And so then, intensely moved again, Jesus, he came to the tomb. Now, it was a cave, and the stone was placed across it. Now, don't miss this. Jesus said to Martha, take away the stone. And Martha, the sister of the deceased, replied, Lord, by this time the body will have a bad smell because he has been buried for 4 days. She's like, no. See, that's really letting you in. That's letting you all the way to the source of something that's ugly, that may be a place of embarrassment for me, a place that I don't want you to see or anybody else to see. I don't want you to have access to my pain. I can't be that vulnerable. And then Jesus replied, didn't I tell you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God? So they took the stone away. Jesus could have done it, but he said, no, you need to do that. You have to take that action. And he looked upward and said, Father, I thank you that you have listened to me. I knew that you always listen to me, but I said this for the sake of the crowd standing around here, that they may believe that you sent me." And when he had said this, he shouted in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And he did. And they believed more so than ever before. And this set off a chain of events that so many people believed, and people that witnessed there. It got back to the priests, the people that were in the religious leaders of the area. And they were like, this is a movement that we can't allow to continue to happen. So we got to put a stop to it. Jesus has to die. And that's what started the point of leading up to his crucifixion and ultimately his resurrection, where Jesus fulfilled his purpose and came into his ultimate glory, what he was talking about when he was resurrected, when we celebrate that on Easter. And through conquering death allows us to have a relationship with the Father through him and only through him. But they did not understand until after that happened. Yet they trusted him in the process. His goal for you and for me is to trust him, not to prevent us from pain. And that's hard to hear. And it's really hard to deal with. So maybe today your step is to go, okay, I'm just going to be honest. He's big enough to handle that. If that's your next step, please, please take it. But maybe for you, it's to let him into what you've walled off in your heart. That thing that happened to you that didn't even make sense, that you wanted to forget about, that pain that happened in the past when you were a child, when you were a teenager, when you were a young adult, back when it didn't make sense and you were hurt and it feels like maybe something was stolen from you or robbed. Or maybe it's just something that you're in the middle of right now. And you're like, I want to forget that this ever happened. It's too painful to deal with. And maybe your step is to go, okay, God, I don't know how to do this, but I want to drop my guard and let you in. To let go of the embarrassment or the pride that keeps you from allowing him to do work, because he's only going to come as far as we allow him. And just like he called forth Lazarus, what he wants to do in you is to call forth the thing that you may think that you have lost. To call forth the hope that you thought you'd never, ever regain. The joy that you just thought is always going to be missing from your life. Or the part of you that he created and knit together in your mother's womb and you have just neglected because you don't realize what he really says about you and who you really are. And he wants to call that out of you. Because what he calls out is who he really created you to be. It's your true identity. But we just put so many layers over it, believing the lies of this world. And we wall off things that are painful because we don't want to go through the process. I don't like going through the process of pain at all. But he's big enough to walk through it with us, right there, and trust him with the outcome. Like I said, it's easier said than done, but oh, it's so worth it. So God, will you just help us to give that to you, whatever it is that we're holding back, whatever it is, whatever walls we've put up, whether that's just to be honest with you finally and understand that you're bigger than that, or try to go, I'm trusting God, I'm trying not to take control, but I don't know how to do this. Help. Help us to just trust you in the process without trying to control the outcome. You win in the end. We know that. But it's just hard to walk through. Will you help us do that? God, we love you. In your name I pray.